Yeah. So I read the philosophy and I try to explain it. My first time reading it. As always, feel free to ask questions along the way. This is the significance of the many property problem in Phenomenology and Mind out of 2022 by Tim Crane and Alex Grzankowski. I apologize how I say everyone's name. But yeah, this is my first time reading it. Let me know. And at the end, we review it. And there's an emote review system. You get to throw some emotes in chat. And there we go. And you let me know how you like it. So here we are. Introduction. According to the adverbialist theory of perception, perceptual experience isn't a relation. Traditionally, the view is advanced as a thesis about how to analyze the language of perceptual reports. On the face of it, Frank, I guess I'm sure they're talking about Frank big time in chat, of course. Frank is perceptually experiencing a red object, seems to ascribe a relation between Frank and some red object. But in light of familiar concerns raised by experientially indistinguishable illusions and hallucinations, the object to which Frank is related must not be an ordinary object. Rather, it must be a red sense datum, a Meinongian object, or something else that could be present in bad cases, hallucination, illusion, as well as good cases, genuine perception. Yeah, so, I mean, if anyone has a question about this, I don't think it's that complicated, but you gotta keep in mind, you may think you see something, but you may be hallucinating it, so when you say you see stuff, you're talking about the object of perception, not necessarily the object in the world. So it could be a hallucination which you are perceiving, but that is a creation of your own mind and doesn't exist outside your mind. Adverbialists aim to avoid commitment to such things while providing a uniform account of experiences, and so they deny that the ascription reports a real relation. Yeah, so you're not relating to anything in the world, you're just doing something. Frank is perceptually experiencing a red object should be analyzed or understood as equivalent to Frank is perceptually experiencing redly. So there's no object here. You're just saying having an experience of red, not a red object. The latter sentence describes Frank's experience in terms of a way of experiencing rather than in terms of an experiential relation to an object. Yeah, so if you're hallucinating, you are experiencing those hallucinations, but there's no object of the hallucination. You just have that color or whatever. So you can imagine like you I had a buddy who was synesthetic. Certain numbers would trigger visuals for him. And so you'd say a number, say like 137, that would be a certain color combination. And he knew that it didn't exist in the world, but he would be experiencing those colors in some way. And so you don't say there's an object there. You just say he's experiencing those colors. Unstupefied says, sounds like a good people have a defense in your court. Well, yeah, I mean, this is the insanity defense where he like didn't actually experience the world. So if you can pull that off, like, yes, but then again, you're probably going to be stuck in a mental institute for the rest of your life. I don't know if that's better than, taking the hit and then getting out of jail. Anyway. These days, adverbialism is usually treated as being of purely historical significance. One reason for this is the view that Frank Jackson's many property problem poses an unanswerable objection to the theory. We argue here that the essence of this problem applies to all theories of perceptual experience, and so is not a problem specifically for adverbialism. Our aim in pointing this out is not to defend adverbialism, but rather to draw attention to a general problem for all theories of experience. Okay, so I'll give these authors credit. What is this? Crane and Grzankowski. They have found what they consider to be a shoddy argument that was, not a shoddy, an overly general argument that was directed at one theory, but they're going to show how it affects all the other theories. So that means it's not necessarily that one theory that it was directed at is good, but that it's a general problem that is that means it's more metaphysically significant than was given credit. It's not tied to one theory. It's a general problem for all the theories of like perception. Okay. So, I mean, I like this strategy. It makes sense in terms of argumentation to generalize an argument and show that we've got a bigger underlying problem. It wasn't just a problem for one theory, it's a problem for everybody. And so it shows that there's a structure, there's an issue in the general understanding of the problem. Okay. Adverbialism. Although it was formulated by Chisholm in 1957 as others as a linguistic thesis, adverbialism is perhaps best understood as a metaphysical thesis about perceptual experience. Experiences are non-relational modifications of the mind. If they are right, adverbialists are well positioned to give a uniform account of veridical, illusory, and hallucinatory experiences without appealing to non-ordinary objects. Yeah, so we were talking about non-existent objects before. That's what hallucinations are. This is a strategy around talking about non-existent objects. So, I mean, they mentioned Meinongianism earlier. Meinong was he a mathematical theorist? It doesn't matter. He would say objects don't he would say existence is a property. The object can exist without existence, or doesn't have to have it can be real without existing. So that would be something that can exist but not in reality. So I mean, these are issues. There's ways of talking about this stuff, and then it's imaginary numbers. Where are they? They're imaginary, but it's okay, the object doesn't exist, but it's still an object. Auntie Stillman says, setting up a problem. I think we got a shot of this paper proving something. Yeah, well, there is a point to not overshooting your statement, your goals. You set up a modest goal, and then you can actually maybe accomplish that. You say, look, we're just going to generalize an argument. That's all we're doing here. And in generalizing it, we're going to show that it's a general problem for this area. They're not trying to solve anything. They're just trying to show that there's wider problems than were recognized in the theory of perception. Unsupervised said, I heard some people with hallucinations don't like pointing out where it is to others because it makes people look in that direction and makes reality interact with their hallucinations. I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, it can't be fun to be dealing with hallucinations. I really never hallucinate or anything like that. So I can't really talk about it. When I was much younger, sometimes out of the corner of my eyes, I'd think I saw a small animal or something. And so I'd think I saw a dog or something, but whenever I'd look, it wouldn't be there. So I got kind of it's not there. I was just trying to figure out what was going on in my world. I'd look and be nah, there's nothing there. But I if you had more consistent hallucinations, I would think that it can't be a good time. It really can't be. Not understanding what's going on in your world is shitty. I was a while back, Shane McInnes, our buddy, was talking about the Nazis would go into people's apartments and move things around, basically gaslighting them, trying to freak them out. And he said it did such a number on people's psychologies. It really, really fucked them up badly. So much that they couldn't understand. It really fucked their heads up for decades. It's we're being fucked with in this way is really bad for our psychology. So yeah. Anyway. And if anyone doesn't know our buddy Shane, I doubt he's lurking, but he might be. Shout out Shane McInnes. Anyone doesn't know our buddy Shane, he's a historian and sociologist, and he is going over history, the history of the entire world, place by place, century by century, and doing history of Israel recently, history of government and politics. So if you have an interest in talking and understanding about modern world and where it came from in terms of history and sociology, go check him out. Yeah. Okay. Frank Jackson in 1977 raised a powerful objection to adverbialism, which has become known as the many property problem. Jackson argued that adverbialists face a dilemma. Either they fail to distinguish clearly distinct experiences or they fail to respect obvious entailments. Consider the following. And before we consider that, Unstupefied said, I hate when the shadows flicker around the corner of my eyes like a beast or of sorts fleeting from light. The motion taking away from the stillness and instilling fear. What's there? Whoa, who? What's there? Yeah. Yeah, so we've got all these I would assume biologically inherited what's the word? Starting to lose words again. Thanks, streamer brain. Instincts where we're looking over our shoulder for beasts and other dangers, and it's I'm not surprised that this is what happens at the edge of our perception. Unreal says, I've had a couple of particularly stressed out periods of my life where I've had minor audio hallucinations. Luckily, I was still connected enough that I realized they can't be real, but it's a thing that happens. Yeah, exactly. So, like, it definitely can happen in different degrees, different ways. So, yeah, it's not fun. Lumen says, I had mice in my house a few years ago, and I constantly convinced myself seeing them out according to my eye. Yeah. So I was like, I expect, like, this is the sort of thing that humans had to worry about, like rats getting into their food for, like, you know, millennia. And so this is the sort of thing we are accustomed to trying to see. And so it's better for us to overcheck, like, animals and other, like, things going around than it is to let it go. Because if we get our food sources ruined, we're fucked. But, like, we need this stuff. And so it's like we've probably got these, you know, evolutionary holdovers. Okay. So consider the following. Frank is experiencing a red square and a green circle. Frank is experiencing a red circle and a green square. On the face of it, adverbialists must say that the conditions under which one is true are the same as the conditions under which two is true. In linguistic terms, both are regimented as Frank is experiencing redly and squarely and greenly and circlely. Since conjunction is commutative, the change is that adverbialists the charge is that adverbialists fail to distinguish these two cases. Interesting. So they're using classical commutative conjunction. And this is one of these things I harp about. You don't need to do that. There are other logical systems where conjunction isn't strictly commutative, or there's other ways to break stuff down. But, like, the idea that they're using classical logic, it's like, okay, but there are other ways to go nowadays. Yeah, exactly, Adam. One solution is to fuse the properties that cluster together, the colors and shapes in this case, so that the solution is distinct between 1 and 2 can be drawn. Yeah, so you can do this. You can find a way in logic or using some other device just to say, okay, you like red circle, green square, or green circle, red square, one way or the other. You can do that. So in the case just described, the adverbialist might appeal to the fused properties of experiencing red squarely and experience red circly, respectively. But as Jackson points out, we now find ourselves hooked on the other horn of the dilemma. From the fact that one is experiencing a red square, it follows that one is experiencing red, and from the fact that one is experiencing green circle, it follows that one is experiencing green. But these entailments fail on the fusion view, because the fused adverbs are syntactically simple, which is supposed to reflect the existence of wholly distinct properties or distinct ways a mind can be modified. There seems to be no way to recover the property of experiencing redly from the property of experiencing red squarely. So the adverbialist either fails to differentiate distinct experiences or fails to capture obvious entailments about experience. Yeah, and so this really does look like what logic you're using will depend on what you can say. Now the question is there a better logic that would actually solve this? I don't know. Or is there always going to be a revenge version where Frank Jackson can be like, or is it Frank Jackson or Jackson? Who is it? Yeah, Frank Jackson can be like, okay, any like sort of modification you can do, I can come back and like, you know, find something that you can't say. Well, might be. Ooh, that's a good rat jam on Stupefied. Frost Pea rat jam, nice. And Stinky Cheese. And whose are these? Jack's TB Giggle? Cool. So we got, I don't know Jack or Frost. Jack Frost. Okay, the adverbialist can respond as followed. When faced with 1 and 2, adverbialists should fuse the properties. When faced with the obvious entailments, they should say it's simply a metaphysical fact that experiencing red roundly entails experiencing redly. Yeah, you just define yourself out of the problem. This fact does not admit a further explanation, it's simply a brute fact about the way the perceptual experience works. Although this is perhaps the best response for the adverbialist, it is not hard to see it as unsatisfyingly ad hoc stipulation. Yeah. This is a powerful reason to reject adverbialism. Adverbialism undergenerates distinctions or undergenerates correct inferences, and with nowhere else to turn, adverbialists look forced to simply take for granted certain facts about experience without explanation. For many philosophers, although not Jackson 77, intentionalism about experience presents itself as an attractive alternative. So what's the problem with saying there's red circly? What gets lost in that? So when you say something's red circly, like with a hyphen, that's like a singular unit. And And to understand, well, if you're seeing something red circly, and then you say, well, you're seeing something red, it doesn't follow from logic. It should follow from logic, because something that's red and circly is clearly just red. But if it's red circly and that's just one thing, then you can't use logic to like abstract the red away from there. And so it seems that if you're trying to use this strategy to be like red circly, well, then you're breaking logic to like save yourself from the problem. And that you don't want to do that. You want to leave logic alone. You're not supposed to break logic to talk about this theory of perception. And so that looks very bad for the adverbialist, that they either have to break logic or what as they call it here, you're losing normal entailments, and then you have to like get yourself an ad hoc solution. So you don't want to break logic for one minor, what looks like one silly little issue in philosophy of perception. Because if logic works everywhere else and then one thing in perception, it's your theory of perception. It's not fucking logic. And that's the issue. Northwest is 12 years old. Seems wrong, but in fact is true. Statement. Yeah. Adam says, so is Frank Jackson's defeater that logical connectors like and don't make sense for illusions or dreams? That's how we know we're not going crazy. It makes sense it's defeating the adverbial response. Like, so you don't actually see a pink elephant, you're seeing pink elephant-ly. You're not declaring there's an object like that in the world that's a pink elephant. So that it defeats the adverbialist response that you're not seeing a pink elephant, you're seeing pink elephant-ly. But the problem is that fucks with the logic. And you don't want to be fucking with the logic just to talk about hallucinations. Yep, okay. Northwest is quite an old cardinal direction, actually. I think Dojo is joking about Kanye West's kid, who he named North. So, yeah. Intentionalism. According to intentionalism, perceptual experiences are intentional or representational states. On the usual versions of this view, Frank's experiencing something red consists in Frank standing in a relation to a propositional consists in Frank standing in a relation to propositional content. We were talking about this earlier in stream about the cognitivists and the non-cognitivists. So again, so you've got a representational state, which is like a proposition, which could be true or false. And so that's exactly what we're talking about right here. You've got propositional content that you're saying you are in relation to. Frank is visually representing, for example, that there's something red and is therefore relating to the content that something is red. So you've got a proposition, and that's what we're talking about here. Doug said, I was joking about my statement. Thank you for that. Yes. I mean, we're philosophers. We ruin jokes. But for anyone who didn't get it, I was explaining. Sure. I'll tell myself that. Contents themselves stand in entailment relations, and it may seem that this fact makes intentionalism invulnerable to the many property problem. First, with respect to the difference between 1 and 2, intentionalists offer the following. 1. Frank is experiencing a red square and a green circle. 1 prime. Frank is visually representing that there is something red and square and something green and circular. 2. Frank is experiencing a red circle and a green square. 2 prime. Frank is visually representing that there is something red and circular and something green and square. This approach treats the contents of experience as general contents. The usual approach employs distinct bound variables that will hold the properties together in the right ways to distinguish 1 and 2. So you're using some sort of scope operation to hold the properties together in the right way. It is also possible to treat contents of experience as singular. Nothing we say below turns on this decision. Lumen says, the hardest part of philosophy streaming is never knowing what's a view and what's a joke in chat. Yeah, context is so hard. Well, that's not even just philosophy streaming. A lot of streaming in general. So I'm in the Daniel Matz streams quite often, and he hates it when people put the /s for sarcasm. So like blah blah /s. So like if you meant /s, or you use a kappa. So like if you're gonna kappa, like kappa. That's not how you spell kappa. If you put a kappa like this, not like that, kappa. So if you kappa like this to mean you're joking, he gets very annoyed about this. And I don't blame him. He's like, look, if your joke was good enough to be funny, you didn't need to put the kappa in. If your joke was stupid, then you put the /s or the kappa in to show that you were joking. Then it wasn't worth putting in chat. He has a point there. Now, there's a lot of people who are maybe not so good at jokes, or it's very hard to be clear in Twitch chat at the real-time speed that you need to do this. So I understand why people do it, but I'm kind of on the Daniel Matt's side here. Like, if you're gonna be funny, be funny. And if you can't be funny, then and you have to, like, you know, put like modifiers on what you're saying so that people will know that, oh, you're supposed to laugh at this, then you're not really being funny. But like, yeah, so it's but like in the real time when people are streaming, like me or like Luminance or like the other people in chat, it's hard to know sometimes. Yeah. It's very similar to Kanye's song where things are poopity and also scoopity. Yeah. So sorry for not being funny then / yes. Yeah. So, well, I mean, I'm not so fussed about this. I just want people to be clear in chat. Like, if you're being funny and it's not funny, it's like, and you're not funny, I'm going to call you out. But it's like, you know, whatever. Like, I'm not going to, this is not a hard and fast rule. It's just, you know, the Daniel Matt's a writer. He's a fiction writer. He's a good writer. And so it's like, you know, he appreciates good writing and good, like, bantering chat. That's what he likes. I do too. And so it's like, you know, I'm kind of on his side about this. But, like, you know, it's Twitch chat. I'm not going to be hard and fast about this shit. It doesn't really matter. Luminance says, in philosophy, I feel like it's kind of the opposite. Sometimes no view is too outlandish, and it's definitely a joke and not serious. That's very true. In philosophy, all opinions can be justified depending on what you're willing to do. Unreal says, I careen madly between shitposting and saying serious things, and I mostly keep up. I try. Unreal, I try. I mean, I'm the same way. If you go see me posting in other chats, there's a very good chance that everything I'm saying is just completely nonsensical and joking. Like, sometimes I say something sensible. Quite often I'm saying something ridiculous, because I know it's ridiculous and I think it's funny. But, like, yeah. Like, if you see me posting in the Daniel Matt's chat, he does not respond to me most of the time, and for good reason. I'm not saying anything worth responding to, and then he will respond to me sometimes, and sometimes he just says, Nogre, fuck you. And so that happens also, because, like, I will, like, catch him unawares, and it'll be something ridiculous, and he'll just be like, Nogre, go fuck yourself, and I'm like, yep, I got him. It's like, yay. So, yeah. Speaking of, shout out the Daniel Matt. Daniel is doing an Elden Ring playthrough. And if you like, you know, I know I've shouted him out a bunch of times. Anyone new here doesn't know him. He's a fiction writer. He's Swiss. His original language is French. So, like, he's practicing. His English is excellent. It's unfair to say he's practicing, but, you know, he's getting better at English. And so every so often there's a linguistic issue. But, like, he's really there to, like, he likes stories and talking. So he'll sit around for like an hour just, you know, wait. Like, you know, he's playing Souls games. He'll just sit around an hour before, like, fighting a boss, talking in chat about something interesting. So if you want, like, intelligent conversation on Twitch, that's one of the places to go. Is Matt very welcoming? What do you mean by very? He is welcoming, but, like, if you are a dickhead, he's going to, like, make fun of you. Like, he will. He doesn't actually ban a lot of people, but he will, like, just make fun of you if you're a dick, or stupid. There are very, very strict no backseating, no help stuff. So if you violate that, you're going to get banned immediately. But other than that, like, he's plenty nice. He's Swiss, oh no? Okay. Oh, he's a welcome Matt. But, yeah, I should have waited for the punchline. God damn it. Yeah, so this is what I'm talking about. Fucking, you can't see the joke coming in Twitch chat all the time. Yes, he's a very nice guy. Son of a gun, I wish I had, yeah. Where am I? And tell dumb puns all the time in other chats. Yeah, you used to get timed out if you would do bad puns in the Daniel Mass chat. Like, he would just be like, that was a pun, you get 2 minutes. Or that was a really good pun, you get 10 minutes. But, like, yeah, so, like, you know, he's a sense of humor about this. Anyway, where were we? Yeah, so basically you can say the representations are certain ways, and then you can modify the way you're talking about the representations to be more accurate about the visual experience that you're either seeing or hallucinating. That's all. That's all that's going on here. So intentionals also seem to have a simple way to explain the entailment from experiencing something red and round to experiencing something red. On the face of it, the fact that the content that there is something red and round entails the content that there's something red provides our explanation. Yeah, so you have the concept of the different things you are experiencing, and so you have a representation of that, and then you can modify that to talk about your entailments. Auntie says, I use humor sometimes in the chat because it's my best strategy to think through things. Yeah. So, I mean, that's fine. Again, if you're in a community like the Daniel Mats where you're not allowed to give information about the game, the jokes can be taken the wrong way. But that's a very narrow sort of thing. As long as you're not being a jerk, it's all right. Yeah. It's like, you're not even, like, for example, in his chat and a few others I'm in, you're not even allowed to joke about the game because that may unintentionally give people ideas about the game, even if you don't know what's going on. Like, so I don't play very many video games. I watch a lot, but, like, I can't, like, so if I say anything about Elden Ring, I have no idea what I'm talking about, but if Dan didn't think about what I was joking about, then I may affect his gameplay, and that's against the rules. So, you know, you have to read the rules, basically, and understand what's going on in individual people's communities. All right, continuing with the paper. But despite the obvious appeal of this move, things cannot be this simple. To see why, consider the relation of an experiencer bears to a content according to intentionals variously labeled in the literature. Alex Byrne calls it the relation of Xing, and Adam Potts calls it sensorially entertaining. Auntie says, that's interesting. The game is sort of sacred there. The experience of the game is sacred there. That's right. You do not affect Dan's playthrough. So you can say you think the area is pretty. You cannot say, hey, look at that deer. That is a cool deer, because then you're pointing something out in the scene. You can say general statements about, like, you know, I like the flora and fauna in this area, but you can't be like, oh, look at that deer on the screen right now. So it's like, you have to be a little careful. But I mean, once you get the feel for it, then you understand it. But like, yeah. No backseeing, no spoilers, you dig? Exactly. There's like a hard no information. Like, no information about the game. Like, you can express your opinion about how the game looks, but that's not information about the game. It's like, I think it's pretty, is telling your reaction to what you see, but not anything like, be like, that deer. Well, no. You don't talk about that deer in the game. Yeah. Okay. So now suppose that it is entailments among contents that explain the relationships between experiences. The problem is that there are many other entailments that contents themselves have, which have no bearing on the relevant experience at all. For example, the content that there is something red entails that there is something red and 2 + 2 = 4. But it makes little sense to suppose that this entailment could be reflected in someone's perceptual experience. Yeah, so you can just keep adding like true statements to entailments because that's how logic works. Like if something's true, like I'm raising my hand, then it's true that I'm raising my hand and also 2 + 2 is 4. But you wouldn't think that in raising my hand, also 2 + 2 is 4. So intentionals now face a dilemma. In order to avail themselves of the relations among contents to capture the obvious relations between experiences, they must appeal to entailment. But in order to block irrelevant entailments, they must deny that sensorially entertaining is closed under entailment. But if sensorially entertaining is not closed under entailment, how can intentionals use the usual notion of entailment as an independent explanation of the relations between experiences? Yeah, so if like, you know, you're experiencing like a red circle, then you want to say you're experiencing red. Yes, but it also implies everything else that logic explains or entails, which is not exactly what is going on here. So there's always a bunch of nonsense that's going on. Dojo says, my daughter just named her stuffed emotional support wolf Everest because the mountain is littered with over 300 dead bodies. Am I a good father? That sounds amazing, Dojo. Like, yeah, that's cool. It's like, yeah, it's like my emotional support animal has a body count of 300. You're gonna go like it's gonna go fuck you up if you come after me. That sounds awesome. Anti-Simmons also the Yankees 7-2. Thank God. One out top of that, I will add on that. Nice. We finally are going to win a game. Good job, you fucking losers. But like, yes. My buddy, I got a text message from my friend. He said he was going to pray for 20 minutes that the Yankees could win a game. And believe me, this guy is like he's like not religious at all. So like the idea that he's like, I'm going to pray for 20 minutes, is like just like hilarious. And so because of Leslie Tanner, when he said he was going to pray for 20 minutes that the Yankees can win a game, I responded, Namaste. And that's thank you, Leslie Tanner, for that. He's not on Twitch, so he doesn't know what that would mean. But like, he doesn't know what it means in context. But like, I was like, Namaste, because he would think that's funny. Yeah, suppose amount is quite on point for those 300 exactly. Yeah, see, that's fun. I mean, why would you want your emotional support thing to be something that has no dead bodies to their names? Okay, so it is a familiar fact that not all intentional relations are closed under entailment. In other words, just because the contents of one's representational state entail some other content, it does not follow that one is thereby in a representational state with the entailed content. Consider some examples. The proposition that Henry and Craig joined the party entails that Henry joined the party. But I might hope that Henry and Craig join the party, even though I do not hope that Henry alone joins the party. I might like their joint company, but prefer them not to come to the party at all if they aren't coming together. Or here's another. The content that the ball is on the table entails the content that something is on the table. But someone who consciously judges that the ball is on the table needn't thereby judge that there's something on the table. In light of the first judgment, it would be rational to make the second judgment, and so perhaps one should make it, but they needn't make it. They might be too lazy, too tired, pressed for time, or they might simply lack the ability to make a judgment with a quantified content. Hey, Yankee 7, Red Sox 2, namaste. Thank you, namaste. Thank you, Leslie Tanner. I believe our work at Explorations played a role in this great victory. Thank you, Leslie Tanner. Okay, so if you're going to say your perceptual content implies something like red and circle, well, it also applies a lot of stuff, but you don't want to say that you're seeing 2 + 2 is 4 when you say you're seeing a red circle. An intentionalist can nonetheless insist that the relationships between experiencing something red and round and experiencing something red, for example, are explained by specific entailments between specific experiential contents of the relevant perceptual states. But now they seem to be very much in the company of the adverbialist who insists that there are brute metaphysical relations holding among non-relational experiences. Yeah, see, once they have to limit themselves to saying, well, not all the other shit is part of my experiential content, they're making ad hoc restrictions on the logic again. Intentionalists, it should be noted, face a problem of overgeneration rather than undergeneration as faced by the adverbialism, but the essence of the problem is the same. Intentionalists look forced to simply take for granted certain facts about experience without explanation. Granted, the intentionalist won't need to posit a new metaphysically brute fact for each and every desired connection between states. Their basic resource is just a familiar relation of entailment, but we still need an explanation of why we can appeal to entailment to explain some connections between experiences while denying that entailment relations between contents are reflected in all such connections. The appeal to bruteness remains a problem. Yeah, so you don't want to be letting all logic be available when talking about perceptual experiences, because that would put all logical entailments into your perceptual content, which seems weird. And to restrict that is ad hoc, which is the same problem that the other folks had, the adverbials had. Even though it was slightly different, it's still, you have to modify the logic, which you don't want to do. In other words, intentionalists and adverbials both need an explanation of what we might call the laws of appearance, why some contents must hang together and others do not. But this was the heart of the original many properties problem. Why is it that someone who experiences something red and round must also experience something red? If this is a problem, it seems to be a problem for intentionalism just as it was for adverbialism. We charged the adverbialist with appealing to an unsatisfyingly ad hoc stipulation. Now a similar charge can be laid against the intentionalist. Okay. So we're almost at the end here. So this is just the last of their argumentation. We'll see. Naive realism and sense data. On the face of it, relational or act-object theories may seem immune to this problem, since the facts about experience experienced properties are explained in terms about facts about properties of objects experienced. Someone who experiences something red and round must also experience something red simply because the object which is red and round is also red. Eat the rich, get the money out of sports. Okay, well, that's fair. You can hate the Yankees all you want and all of professional sports all you want to. But it's like, yeah. I mean, are we going to get rid of all the sports? I don't know. People should be paid millions while they're starving children. Yeah, that's fair. It's like, yes. But matters are not so simple. For on a naive realist form of relational theory, objects have in addition many unexperienced properties, and for this reason such a theory also owes an account of the laws of appearance. For example, a red and round object also has an invisible microscopic properties which are not experienced. Perceivers do not stand in the relevant perceptual relation to all properties of the perceived object, only those which can perceptually appear in experience. So the same question arises. Why do some experienced properties of the experienced object hang together in some experiences and some do not? By contrast, the sense datum theorist holds that the objects of experience have exactly the properties they are experienced as having. It might seem that this theory does avoid many of the many properties problem as we have formulated it, but in fact the problem trails not far behind. Ask yourself, which properties do the objects of sensing have? The object's answer is only those which are experienced as hanging together. The sense datum theory, like the other theories, presupposes the laws of experience, the facts about how experienced properties hang together. And so, they keep using this how experienced properties hang together. The idea is that what is the relevant logic? Hang together is kind of a stand-in for like what actually counts as relevant in the logic. What you can say all get discussed. Unsupervised says, so it's like when you mention red circly, you are mentioning everything red and circly you've seen previously. This is saying that when you mention red and circly, if you want to say that's part of your experience, well, what else counts as part of your experience? And you want to say, well, redness counts. But only saying that, it's not everything you've seen previously, it's everything logically that could be said also, like 2 + 2 is 4, because that's true. So when you experience, say, well, I'm experiencing something red and circly, well, sure, but then it also follows that 2 + 2 is 4. How do you say, well, that has nothing to do with red and circly? It's not so much of the history, it's more of what could be logically said, which includes historical stuff, but also includes, the definition of like a bachelor is an unmarried male. So I'm experienced red and circle and a bachelor is an unmarried male. That's true by definition. So that's true. But that's not what you're experiencing, the fact that a bachelor is an unmarried male. So like that's part of the issue. It's yellow bluey, it's green, you psycho. Yeah. What's black and white and red all over? Remember that one? Okay. If this is right, then all the leading metaphysical theories of perception encounter the challenge that lies within the many properties problem. In order to describe experience correctly, they all have to appeal to facts about how experience properties are connected and then find space in their theories to accommodate those facts. The classical adverbialist approach is to appeal to brute metaphysical facts about ways experiences are modified. The intentionalist has to restrict the entailment relations between contents in a way that captures only the relations between experience properties. The naive realist has to rule out relations to the unexperienced properties of the ordinary objects, and the sense data theorist constructs experienced objects with precisely those properties which are related in the way that they are experienced. Yeah, so everyone has to sort of like gerrymander their reasoning to to explain only the relevant properties that they want to talk about. So everything that you are in that moment as well. Yeah, now you're getting there, unstupefied. Newspapers, they still exist? Yeah, my mom gets the New York Times delivered every day, Doja. See, now you're getting there. All these properties of perception take for granted facts about the ways in which experience properties hang together. I mean, again, the logical relations that are important to those properties when they say hang together. This is a little bit weak, but it's fair. And all of them propose more or less ad hoc explanations of these facts. Looked at In this way, the many property problem will not on its own decide between philosophical theories of perception. Rather, it is something that exposes a quite general characteristic of these theories, their reliance on the laws of appearance. Okay, yeah. Okay. That was, like I said, not bad as far as analytic philosophy goes. Like, they set out a non-crazy problem that they were gonna generalize on, and then they did that. And I think, I don't know, I'm not an expert in this area, but I understood what they were doing, and I think chat was getting there too. But anyway, this is the emote review. If you are in chat now, you are now welcome to review this paper using emotes. It's the paper, not me, although you can also rate me if you want to. So if you thought this was fun and gave you some fun ideas and made the brain dance, give it a brain dance. Spelling and capitalization do count here. What's up, Quist? I feel like the authors promised a boat trip and all I got was a walk from the front to the boat to the back. Yeah, well, this was analytic philosophy. And if you think it really didn't follow up on what they said, you can give it a nog grapes for big claims that shrivel up. So that would give you, say, it didn't actually fulfill what it did. Then you give it a nog grapes. For a nog turd for all style, no substance. So if it was flashy, but there was nothing really there. A nog navel gazing only for academics. You can give it a nog knife for slicing and dicing arguments. A nog or for Ouroboros. A deeper ancient ideas. And nog scream for existentialist and or artistic or maybe even social drama. You can also use the global vote yay and vote nay of Twitch. And my vote meh. Note that anything in the green in the top of this will make the I calculate over score makes it go up. Everything in the red will make it go down, and the vote may actually makes everything go towards the middle. But yeah, so I calculate a score. So let me know what you think. So Quiz gave it a grapes. Thank you for the voting. Olka says the snozberries taste like snozberries, even if you use a different tongue. Did I get the paper summed up correctly? Yes. The snozberries taste like snozberries. Unreal says, navel gazing, I feel like this started in the media res of a conversation I've completely not been part of. Yeah, so that's part of, that's fair. So Koss gave it a Ouroboros and a meh, and someone gave it an Ouroboros and a yay. Thank you for rating. Yeah, you have to know these discussions, so I'm kind of with Brian here on the nog navel. Yeah, it's kind of like a philosophical problem. I'm not angry with it. For the reason I said, they set out to do the show that there is a more general problem in this area of philosophy, but again, this is a general problem in this area of philosophy. What emote do you use if the hamster brain is eating celery? I don't know. A nog knife? I'd give it a nog knife, actually, because, I thought this was kind of this is basically one constructed argument. The closest one to this, just hang it up. You could give it a vote meh. Just I'm leaving. You don't have to be, you can just give it, you can just be it was a very meh thing to you. You're just kind of done. You can also give it a nay if you don't want it. Nog rodent, yeah. Grapes. I could see why chat thinks this is a grapes article. It didn't really go anywhere for most people's, it didn't do enough for most people. And so it wasn't flashy, but it just didn't go anywhere. So I could see why some people would give it the grapes. I'm less fussy about it. In this area, I feel like they made their case. They didn't do too much. They didn't do too little. They just sort of hit it. So, I feel like this is okay philosophy. So it's this is not bad. Yeah, gave it a meh. Thank you for rating. Doug, this is just not for me. I'm outside the people. I care about some of these distinctions. Yeah, and that's entirely fair too. It's just not for you. Anti, so that's part of why I gave it a thumbs up, because even though a lot of this was over my head, I could see how they showed a problem to the perception views. And that's kind of how I feel about it. I kind of thought they did a good job at making a, vote yay, not voting meh. I feel like they did a decent job, but you know what, they're going to get 2 nog navels out of this, because it really wasn't much of a, it was really very narrow, but they did a good job. So it's a yay, but a navel. Anti-Snowman says, I have too big of a bias towards feeling things are solved. That's fair. Unsuperfied grapes because the hamster is hungry. Yeah, that's fair. This is how it goes. Luminance says a yay and a brain dance. I feel like there's going to be a split here between the philosophers, the professionals, and the non-philosophers. I'm this is pretty good as far as straightforward analytic philosophy goes. It really is. I'm giving it a yay. I gave it a thing. I feel like maybe even two. Nah, does it get 2 knives? You could give it a second knife. Yeah, I'm gonna give it a second knife. So like this is okay. I mean, I don't want to be like this is the greatest paper ever. It just ain't. But like it's all right. Doja says, I appreciate when things aren't over-explained like the presentation. Yeah. So, like, that's part of the thing. It's like, this is solid. This is very solid, I feel like. It's like, I'm not angry with any of this. It's not trying to do too much. But, like, again, that's okay. Lumen says, gave me some cool stuff to think about. Yeah. I have no interest in thinking about this shit. Like, most of philosophy of mind, I'm just like, nope, I don't care. Adam says, but if I said 2 people show up at the party, my security camera only recorded 1 person, I'm wrong about my statement, and she showed and had arrived. But if I've imagined both and not entertained logically, how by withholding logical entailments, and how would anyone know what's real and what's not? But if I did intentionally imply modal logic, the scope is over domain, the domain of thoughts, and using concepts correctly, one specified, one's picked out. Yeah, I mean, this is part of the issue, is that getting the entailments correct is the difficulty here. And it's like, why do we think it makes sense that you can say certain entailments follow and certain ones don't? And the authors here showed that, like, even if some entailments work, you're going to get some unexpected entailments. So this really does depend on the underlying logic used. But like, that's kind of the point, is that you need to have some of the logic pre-worked out for these theories to make sense. And that's the issue. You need to like have more than these theories are given. Or the theories do not give enough on their own. And it's a universal problem between all these theories of perception, because they do not give you the right answer when you start asking these sorts of questions. Ross says, I did think about painting a red circle. That's cool. Unsupervised, I did like redly and circly parts. Yeah. It's good. I mean, I like the Snosberry parts. I'm with, Boss.